Good morning, everybody. I'm calling to order the Connecticut State Advisory Council for Special Education. Oh my gosh, meeting. You guys, I have all my wrong information in front of me today. Meeting. So I am the chair and I am the parent member. And this meeting today is Wednesday, November 29th at 9:04 a.m. So as usual, I'm always going to talk about acronyms. So during this meeting, we use many acronyms. We use often as the SAC, which is us, the Connecticut State Advisory Council for Special Education, and the CSDE, which is the Connecticut State Department of Education. If somebody uses a new acronym, could you just quickly say what it means? And today, I want to remind members to try to say their name before they speak. And council purpose and function. Okay. Under the authority of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Connecticut State Department of Education maintains an advisory council for the purpose of providing policy guidance with respect to special education and related services for children and youth with disabilities. Okay, next is going to be our introductions and roles. So I'm going to go around the screen and I'm just going to say your name. If you could make sure that your name is on your screen, then that would make it so much easier for me. And I'm going to ask you just to quickly state your name and your role on the council. So Missy, I'm going to start with you.
Good morning, everybody. Missy Wrigley. I am a consultant at the State Education Resource Center, and I am here as a parent of a young boy with disabilities.
Wonderful. Catherine? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I had clicked on mute. Good morning, everyone. I'm Catherine Sum. I'm the education supervisor of the Children's Services Program at BESB, and I represent the Bureau of Education and Services for the Blind.
Thank you. Anna?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anna Wittig. I am the Chief Administrator of Oak Hill Schools, and I represent private state-approved schools in Connecticut.
Thank you so much. Joshua. Josh?
Yes, Joshua's fine. I'm Joshua Martin. I'm the Director of Pupil Services in East Haddam, and I represent CONCASE.
Thank you. Jovi?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joviana Morales, and I am on the SAC as a parent.
Wonderful. Mia? Oh, Mia's recording today. Wonderful. Jennifer?
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Lucier, and I am on the council as a parent of a child with a disability.
Wonderful. I will introduce Mia is one of our student members. Sean?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Cronin. I work at the Connecticut State Department of Education with Brian in the Due Process Unit.
Thank you. Amy?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Messenger, and I'm here as a parent today of 2 children with disabilities.
Wonderful. Jolie?
Jolie Medina, support staff to the council, here with Director Klimkowitz at the SDE and Sean Cronin.
Great. Lewis?
Morning, Louis Talarita, Connecticut State Department of Education. I'm an agency appointment to the SAC via the McKinney-Vento federal legislation.
Thank you so much. Jeff?
Yes, Jeffrey Spar. I am a parent representative on the SAC and the president of the Jolie Fan Club.
Wonderful. Brian?
Thank you, sir.
Thank Brian Klimkowitz.
Good morning, everyone. Brian Klimkowitz. I'm the Special Education Division Director here at the State Department of Education. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Wonderful. Nachi?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nachi Bhatt. I represent the Department of Children and Families.
Wonderful. Tom?
Yeah, good morning, Tom Kosker. With Disability Rights Connecticut, DRCT, you'll hear me refer to it as. I am also a parent of a child with a disability.
Wonderful. Allison?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Allison Copey. I'm the Regional Director of the Northern Region of the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, also known as BRS.
Thank you. Representative Comey.
Good morning, everyone. Representative Comey, Robin, and I am the legislator on the SAC and serve on the Education Committee, the Committee on Children, and Human Services this year.
Thank you so much. Brian Smith.
Good morning, everybody. I'm in the car. Brian Smith, Assistant Regional Director, representing the Department of Developmental Services. Good morning and happy belated Thanksgiving to all.
Same to you. I don't see anybody else. Missy, do you see anybody? I don't see anybody else on my screen. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so next we are going to do public comment. Is there anybody on for public comment?
I do not have anyone on the line at this time.
Wonderful. Okay, next item is our consent agenda. We have to approve the council minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I had one clarification request.
Yes.
In the hold on, let me-
Josh Martin.
Beg your pardon?
Josh Martin with
Roundtable?
Yes, and under the roundtable, I was requesting that after the end of the first sentence, that's the statement that is attributed to me, just
Yep.
adds of students. I think it's reads increase in behavioral and mental health period. But if we could add of students just to clarify that, that's what I was discussing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jolie, I also have we have Lisa Nee as an in-person guest. I believe Lisa was online. Oh, we have Dawn DeCow is joining us.
I had a correction as well,
Okay.
Susan. Under the roundtable for Jane's comments for CPAC, it says rises to the service, and I believe it should be rises to the surface.
Thank you.
Yep.
Wonderful. And Jolie, are you ready under my roundtable comments?
Oh boy, I got roundtable all going this time, huh?
So at the end, before it says mention of grants, it says talks about students that use apps, phones to help with assistive technology and supports. And I had, and the need to have their phone with them at school, not in a locked pouch. Did you get that wording?
Yep.
And the mention of grants was, we should really look at how schools are using competitive grants that are meant for safety and social emotional for these pouches.
Got it.
Is there anybody else that has any corrections?
Jolie, for the roundtable, mine was specific to language access.
Is that Jovi?
Yes, I'm sorry, Jovi.
That's okay. I got it. Again, Jovi, specific to
language access.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Are there any more corrections? No, thank you. It was Julie, it was a really, we had a great roundtable last meeting, so there was a lot of information. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the October 25th full SAC minutes?
So moved by Missy.
Missy, who would like to second that?
I'll second. Jovi.
Jovi. Abstentions from those who did not attend. I don't see.
That would be me. Oh, sorry, Allison.
Allison is abstaining. Great. All in favor of approving the minutes with corrections, please either raise your hand or your hand button on your screen. Wonderful. The October 25th full SAC meeting minutes are now approved. We have had two more people join us. We have had Dawn and Lena. Can you quickly just introduce yourself and your role, Dawn?
Hi, I'm Dawn Dickow. I am a paraeducator, Braille transcriptionist for the Southington Public Schools. I was invited to attend the last meeting, and I am now here for this meeting.
Thank you. Lena. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Lena Esposito from Connecticut Family Support Network. Represent the South Central region. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. I don't believe we have anybody else who's joined us. Okay, wonderful. We're going to move on to old business. So the executive committee report. We are having our legislative breakfast. Very excited. It will be in the legislative dining room of the Legislative Office Building in Hartford on January 17th from 9 to 10 a.m. And we have our full SAC meeting immediately following in room 1D. And I would like to encourage all members to attend in person, especially our student members. We are putting together a one-page, it's already written. We're just waiting for the members of the executive committee to all take a look at it. It's a one-page email for you to reach out to your legislator with just who we are and an invite to the breakfast, and a link to find who your legislators are and how to address them in the letter with dear. And so if anyone needs help with when we send this out to the full SAC, so keep your eyes out for it, and we need it sent out as soon as you get it, if you could look it over. If anybody needs help with contacting legislators or figuring out who their legislators are, please reach out to me or to Jolie. The main purpose of the breakfast is to introduce us and our priorities and recommendations to the legislative body. And I'm pretty excited that we're holding our SAC meeting in one of the committee rooms afterwards. I remember first time giving testimony there at the Education Committee, and I would have been lost without Representative Comey there to give me guidance. And so I'm very honored to have her on our committee. So at this, we're also hoping to encourage some legislators to join the SAC. We still have 4 open positions. So I had a quick question that Representative Comey, if you're able to answer this, should we be reserving the LOB for, or Brian, for the 24th, our snow date? Any thoughts?
It's a good question.
You're
I mean,
muted, Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Can you send me an email on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Jolie?
Following Wednesday, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday the 24th, snow date. I don't think we'll need it this year, but who knows? It was snowing yesterday, right?
You never know.
You never know. Okay. Great, wonderful. So next on executive report is the annual report.
Real quick question, Susan.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
sorry.
Sorry, hon. Sorry. I
No,
should.
just real quick. The as far as inviting legislators, obviously we have Representative Comey there. I made a comment. I'm happy to reach out to Jeff Curry as well. Who's the chair of the Education Committee, and others. I think on the Education Committee are key to make sure we invite. And we may not have people on the SAC who have them as their representatives, so we might not hit them. So we might want to be intentional about connecting with specifically those on the Education Committee. So I don't know if that makes sense for that to go through you, Robin, or through us. Sometimes it makes more, a little more impact if it's from, not their colleague, but I'll defer to you if it makes sense for it to come from you, the invite, or through us.
I would say the Education Committee, and I wouldn't leave out the Children's Committee as well.
Both. That's awesome.
Because we do some educational stuff in especially with the safety, involving safety of kids. Yes, and I would suggest following up with the aides, and
Right.
I think I'd be happy to have a conversation offline about what that, a plan, what that might look like. I can send out the invitation, but I think constituent, reaching out via
Exactly.
constituents is good. And then also to invite them, if they're interested in it and can't attend, wouldn't it be great that, they join the council? Just keep asking.
Yeah. Is Children's Representative Liz Lenahan is the chair of that now? Right.
Yes,
And she's been
absolutely,
involved
yep.
with us in the past.
And Sarah Kitt is the co-chair of the House, or vice chair at the House level, and I believe she has special needs kids. So
Yeah.
we should reach out. I can reach out to her as well to see if she's interested in, and she seems very enthusiastic. She's relatively new, but super enthusiastic about getting her hands dirty.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you,
What
Robin.
about higher education, since we're working with transition and changing requirements for special education teachers?
That would be great if we could get at least one person. That would be super. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the other reason I bring it up, Susan, is just that time goes quickly, and
Yes.
the holidays are a couple weeks away, and reaching out to them and then their aides, and they only answer the email half the time unless you're Robin, but
Right.
it's the aides, so you got to get their aides, and you are the aides, so there's just a process there that takes some time. And then January 17th will be here before we know it. So I'm happy
Yes.
to assist with that if needed, but just let me know. I mean, again, I have connections with a few of those folks, but not many of them. But of course, it helps if someone has connections.
Right. So that we already have the letter the 1-page email written. I'm just waiting for to get okayed and to
Right.
be double checked. Jolie's going to make sure, because I put her contact information in it. And I believe, Brian, we talked about just turning that also into a one little colorful little flyer thing with the information that has a link that can be shared. And I'm also very much encouraging our students and our parents and all our members to send this to legislators. Legislators want to hear from you. So yes, someone else was just trying to speak. Was that Representative Comey?
It was we should probably, I'm just trying to think. I have to logistically how we get, are we going to make a big list? Can Jolie put together a big list of those 3 committee members? And then, I just have to think about it, like an approach on how to do it easy and fast and
right.
Well, maybe we could,
make sure that
we could set up a quick call with you, Robin, at some point in the next week or so. Is that a possibility that we can hash this out? So maybe Susan,
Yeah,
we can just do
absolutely.
a quick email to her on that, and then get a phone
Right.
call together real quick, something like that.
Yep.
All right,
And I still encourage everybody to invite legislators that are, even if they're not on the committees, because at some point they will have it past their desks, something that has to do with special education. So that would be wonderful. Okay. Now we are on annual report. So we are currently working on the executive committee is working on the annual report. And for those that don't know what that is, what it is we are taking all the priorities and recommendations that we work on all year. We try to filter them down and compile them, and then we put them into a report that is shared with the CSDE, legislators, State Board of Education, and some other interested parties. So today we're going to work a little bit later. We're going to try to just summarize our priorities. Jennifer put a document together. We want to go over, is it correct, Jen, restraint and seclusion and the LRE work groups work that we've done?
Yes, the least restrictive environment work group.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So I see that Mateus has joined us. So should we move on to Catherine? Are we on to, unless someone has any questions about the annual report, I'd like to move on to the membership committee. No? Anyone who wants to help? It's lots of fun. Okay, membership committee report, Ms. Catherine Sum.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Sum. I'm the chair of the membership committee. And we have 2 new member candidates to present today. The first one is a student candidate, and it is Mateus Casanova, who just joined us. So welcome, Mateus. And so the executive committee had the opportunity to meet Mateus recently. And I just wanted to share a little information from Mateus's application. Mateus, and again, Mateus, I'll give you an opportunity to speak as well if you'd like to, but there's no pressure here. So Mateus is a high school student from Danbury. And on his application, under the question, why are you interested in the State Advisory Council for Special Education? Mateus shared that he would like to help people learn about blindness and all disabilities and how to teach students like me. And under additional information that he wanted to share with the council, he included, I moved to the United States a year ago. I did not have the opportunity to have access to things I needed to learn when I first came. My teachers needed help and resources too. I want to make sure the disabled will have what they need to learn. So we're excited that Mateus is interested in joining the council. And again, Mateus, no pressure, but if there's anything you'd like to share with the council members, you're welcome to do so.
It's your time to talk.
Can I talk?
You say hello to everyone. Go ahead, it's your turn.
There's a group of about, I want to say 20 people here. So yeah.
Good morning, Mateus.
Morning, everyone. How are you?
We're great.
Everybody's smiling, Mateus. Everybody's smiling.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak for all of blind people and old people with any disability.
Thank you for joining us, Mateus. My name is Missy Wrigley. Thank you.
Miss letter E. What letter E?
Missy Wrigley.
Letter E?
R.
Miss R. Easier. Yeah. Miss, what was the name, Miss?
It was Missy Wrigley.
It's Missy Wrigley like the gum. I don't know if you ever chew gum, but it's Wrigley gum. But it's no relation, so.
No relation, Mrs. R. Yeah, that's easy, a letter. And Miss Catherine.
Yes, and we've got, I know you weren't here when we did introductions, but we have a number of parent representatives here. There is a student who is here virtually. She's recording the session to view it later. And then we have other representatives from what we call other stakeholder groups, which would be other agencies. And we have a legislative representative with us, for example. So we're excited that you're interested in joining the SAC. And does anyone have any questions they wanted to ask Mateus?
I would just like to say thank you. This is Anna Wittig, so it's Ms. W. Ms. W. I really just wanted to say thank you so much. We do appreciate your effort in trying to advocate for everyone and for making the time to be with us. And truly, there is no test on remembering everybody's name, I promise.
Thank you. That's better. I'm up to so many names here in the school, and oh my goodness.
And we can get you a list of all of the members as well, Mateus. So, but there again, there won't be a quiz. Anyone have any other questions or comments for Mateus? No? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion then to vote on Mateus's application to become a student member of the SAC?
I'll make a motion that we make him a student member of the SAC.
Okay.
And this is Jen Lucier.
And who would like to second?
Missy will second.
Okay, so all in favor, either press the hand button on your screen or raise your hand.
Everybody's pressing their hand buttons.
And I don't think there any opposed. I don't think so. I think everyone raised their hand. Okay, fantastic, Mateus. Congratulations. You are our latest student representative on the SAC. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, we're looking forward to having your input on the council. So thank you so much.
Welcome to the State Advisory Council, Mateus.
Welcome, Matthias.
It's Jolie. Wait, Miss.
That's me.
Oh, your voice changed.
So, and we have an additional candidate to vote on today as well. So Dawn DeCow introduced herself earlier, and she is our para-educator candidate. And many of you had the opportunity to meet Dawn at our in-person meeting this past October. She was a guest. So I thought I would share a couple things from Dawn's application as well. And I'd also like to mention Dawn is Para-Educator of the Year and comes from Southington. And on her application, when asked, were you interested in joining the State Advisory Council? Dawn shared that as both a parent of children with disabilities and a para-educator, I've always wanted to learn more ways to help with special education. I was recently asked if I would like to join the council, and I look forward to participating. And under additional information she wanted to share, she included, I'm very proactive in seeking out information to help me in my job as a paraeducator, including training specific to my student, as well as rights and regulations in the United States and Connecticut. So Dawn, I know you're here, and I wasn't sure if there's anything you wanted to add, or if anyone had any questions they wanted to ask Dawn.
So this is Dawn DeCow. I'd like to say that I am very humbled to be considered to be included in such a unique group of people. I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome here that everybody is so well spoken and represents their stakeholders so well. And I feel that I am I feel like a little mouse in the corner right now, like a little observer, because it's awe-inspiring to me that there's just so many people that are part of this council that want to make change in special education in those students' daily lives.
Thank you, Dawn. And I do see a couple of hands. Missy, I think your hand went up first.
Yeah, Dawn, I just want to say welcome. And as a special ed teacher by trade before joining CERC, I couldn't survive. Where did you go? Your picture disappeared. Wherever you are. I thought I saw you, but now I can't see you. Oh, there you are. All right, you moved. I could not survive without my paras, so thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and Anna, I see your hand up.
This is Anna Wittig. Dawn, I just want to welcome you. Do not feel like a mouse. I started as a para-educator. I moved on to a teaching position and now in administration. And paras are a crucial part of the team in educating our students. So thank you for coming aboard.
Thank you.
Dawn, this is Susan Yankee. Just know that this is an inaugural position that you are holding. We just added a paraeducator because we really felt that this group felt your voice needed to be heard on this group. So I want to thank the full SAC for making this position happen. And I want to welcome both you and Matthias. And we're very excited to have your voices added. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Dawn? No? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to accept Dawn's application?
Jonathan makes a motion to accept her application.
Thank you, Jonathan. Would anyone like to second the motion?
Brian Smith.
Well,
Okay.
you got it,
Nachi beat me. I'll pass to Nachi for a second.
All right. Nachibot, you're the second. All right. All in favor, either raise your hand or raise your hand button. Okay, and I don't think anyone is opposed. All right, well, Dawn, welcome to the State Advisory Council for Special Education. And again, welcome to our two new members, Matthias and Dawn. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to the legislative committee report, which I believe Brian Klemkowitz is going to give us an update
Okay,
on past legislation.
Miss
Yes, Matthias?
Catherine,
Yep, there you go.
Sorry. Yes, Mateus.
I have to leave now.
Okay.
Sign off.
All right, Mateus, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll be in touch, and we're really looking forward to your participation in the SAC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mateus, congratulations.
Bye, Mateus. Have a good day.
Congrats, all of you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.
Good morning, everybody. And once again, congratulations to our two newest members, Dawn and Mateus. It definitely is an awe-inspiring group, and I'm humbled as well to have such a diverse representative group of our state here coming together on a regular basis. I have many slides. I'll try to be brief, but I wanted to provide you an update on some of the legislative requirements that came about during the last legislative session. And this time, I wanted to focus, there was many large bills, as you'll recall, and Public Act 23-137 had a significant amount of new requirements at both at the state level and at the local level for our districts and those supporting students with our special needs throughout the state. So for the purpose of today's brief presentation, I'm going to focus mostly on the secondary transition section because there's so much in there, and just let you know kind of where we are with the steps of that we're taking, along with information that we're communicating and disseminating. But as always, please stop me during the presentation if you have any questions along the way. If not, we can, carve out some time later on afterwards if you have questions as well at the end. So I have a direct link here for you in the presentation just so you can look at the different sections that are highlighted here. I also want to take a quick moment to thank Alicia Tracus, who is, many of you know Alicia. She's our primary point of contact for secondary transition and special education in the Bureau of Special Education. And I have to thank Alicia for putting this content together. And she's been out and about presenting to our local districts and other stakeholders across the state on these topics. So in a nutshell, the previous legislation focuses on these 5 areas. We're all aware now that it extended IDEA eligibility for students who reach the maximum age and do not receive their regular high school diploma. It provides a requirement for each district to designate a transition coordinator in the state. That's a new requirement for all of our LEAs across the state. There's a variety of training programs that are now required and part of legislation that I'll talk through a little bit. And it also speaks to one-stop shop, if you will, for transition resources and information about transition services, not only while students are in public school, but also as they're navigating to their adult life or life beyond secondary school. Finally, there's requirements around public transition programs and setting statewide standards for those programs, as well as oversight and monitoring by the Connecticut State Department of Education through the State Education Resource Center. So there's a few slides on that as well. But in a nutshell, that's the overview of the requirements that are related to secondary transition. So breaking those down a bit, we just wanted to bring the council's attention to some of the communications that we've sent out to the districts this year. We've had 2 formal memos that went out, one back in July alerting the field of these new requirements. And then we had a fairly recent update on November 16th. These are direct links to those memos, but essentially it alerts the district to let them know that as of July 1, that students remain eligible for special education until the end of the school year in which they turn 22, or when they receive their regular high school diploma, and whichever comes first. And there's a direct link to the statute around that. what the districts did, because of there really was very little lead time, and once the legislation was passed, the summer hit, July 1st came and went. And so we really wanted to make sure districts understood their responsibility to reach out to those adult students and parents who were impacted by the legislation, let them know of the new rights that they have under our state special education law. And then in some cases, students needed to return back to the school districts, convene a planning and placement team meeting, and expand their IEP to address the additional eligibility that they had. For students who had birthdays prior to July 1, there was no action that was necessary. So there are special circumstances, and I know Brian's given updates previously, but this slide just talks to the fact that the Department of Developmental Services offered those students who had placements in adult placements for their adult support. They could continue that if they chose to. And the school districts would want to make sure that the parents were informed of their choice, to make sure that they had all the information necessary. And then the districts would document the parents' decision on our prior written notice on the IEP and save that documentation for reference if needed. Afterwards, for parents who decline their DDS placement, the school district would then follow through and implement the IEP until the student end of the school year in which the student turned 22. We also sent out updated guidance and information to let individuals know, for those who exited high school for other reasons, there are some reasons there that perhaps they discontinued schooling or dropped out, or maybe the reason wasn't known. They either moved or were not sure they were continuing. Those individuals can come back to the school district for up until the end of the school year in which they turn 22 to complete their programming and to finish with either a regular high school diploma, like I said, whichever comes first. So we do have updated guidance on that for students who are exited for other reasons besides graduation. So continuation of services, we not appealed, but we wrote to the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, to let them know that our year of age cohort is changing. Every year when the federal government sends us money, we have to let them know which students are covered in the funds that we're using. And obviously previously, our year of age cohort was to the end of the school year in which the student turned 21. And then we had that Second Circuit decision called the AR ruling, which said on the 22nd birthday. And then that changed a third time in a relatively short time frame to the end of the school year in which the students turned 22. So we are awaiting and do expect the Office of Special Education Programs to approve our revision to the year of age cohort, which would then allow the federal dollars to be utilized to support students through that extended period of time. A little bit around the designation of transition coordinators. So in addition to the local level, the Connecticut State Department of Education shall employ a statewide transition service coordinator, and that individual will be part of the Bureau of Special Education. And also we will have at least one assistant transition services coordinator position. So we are in process and working with leadership in the HR department to bring additional supports to incapacity at the state level to assist in the implementation of all of this new legislation. Just a quick definition here in the statute of those two positions around the transition coordinator and their responsibilities. So one of the tasks of the new transition coordinator by January 2024 is to ensure that each local school district has a designated transition coordinator, and that the transition coordinators are required to complete a training that we develop and ensure that parents have information about secondary transition services. How we're doing this is that on EdSite, we have a feature called Contact Manager. So we have a variety of roles. For example, our superintendents, our special education directors are housed all publicly on EdSite as a point of contact. And so additionally, we're adding transitions coordinators for those required positions for the districts. And we're going to maintain that list on an ongoing basis through EdSite. Whoops. On to our training programs. So the first training area talks about ensuring that all educators and school staff who do not provide transition services are trained about transition services. All those individuals who may not be working, with students from 14 and up, or earlier as determined by the planning and placement teams. And then updated at least annually, we're required to share best practice recommendations for special education and transition services. And, those may be on demand, which our districts are appreciative of accessing on demand and online courses, self-paced courses, so that they can disseminate and provide those training topics on when it's convenient for them or when they have scheduled time in their districts, although we will have a mix of in-person training as well as virtual. You're probably aware through our IEP quality training series, we do have a module that is focused on secondary transition. So we will be utilizing that in some capacity with these new requirements to ensure that folks have access and the information contained within those modules. This talks a little bit more about the training program for the transition coordinators and the CSDE establishing standards for that training. We're also collaborating with many of our partner adult agencies within the same legislation. Each of our adult agencies are required to have a liaison to the Connecticut State Department of Education, and those liaisons will work closely with the transition coordinator and assistant transition coordinator for many of these new requirements. There are different requirements depending on when transition coordinators are identified by the local districts. There is some lead time for folks who are appointed before July 1, 2024. And those, if they're appointed after July 1, 2024, they would have to complete the training within 1 year as opposed to 3 years. Similarly, for all of the educators who provide special education in transition, I mentioned earlier on the slide that folks that do not provide transition still need to be trained. These are for individuals who are working with students that are of transition age. And so that training must be completed within 5 years if they're hired before July 1. After July 1, the training has to happen within the year. So with all these new requirements at the local level, I mentioned a few pieces of communication and memos that we've disseminated and webinars that we've held, but we're also building in these assurances into the IDA grant. A little bit later on this school year, Tom Boudreau, our IDA grant coordinator, will do a presentation about our IDA grant. And part of what the districts have to do is sign off on assurances that they're providing services in accordance with the IDA and federal requirements. We're adding to those requirements the new legislation in Connecticut around transition coordinators and the training aspects that happen. So there will be an attestation that will be tied to the funding that each local school district can disseminate and utilize. just a couple more slides and then we can stop for questions, but feel free to jump in, as I mentioned. Transition resources and services. So just a couple of definitions here for you around what transition service mean and the transition resources. The legislation also contains definitions, which is helpful because sometimes these words can be either misunderstood, misinterpreted, or used kind of interchangeably. This talks about the state agency collaboration to ensure that the CSD reports to any state agency for programs and services for students with adults, for students in the school district at PPTs, and ensure that those adult agencies are invited to planning and placement team meetings at least 2 years prior to when the student would be graduating. Our partners at CERC also have a role in developing and assisting in developing the transition resources and services that, and also with the PTPs, or public transition programs, at the center. Sorry, not at the center. The school districts who provide public transition programs or any outside entities. CERC has a role in assessing those programs, reviewing those programs. So we'll be working closely with them in the upcoming weeks and months. So part of the responsibility of the transition coordinator is also to share with parents resources about transition and for students in grades 6 through 12. So this just highlights that fact. We included our current website around secondary transition, as well as EdSite, where we maintain a list of all of the Connecticut transition programs, including the public transition programs, which the districts have in place, or some of the districts do have in place. These are new requirements for the planning and placement team that talk about upon immediate the first PPT meeting in which a student is identified as eligible, and each meeting thereafter, about sharing those resources in the parent's native language or primary language spoken. We are in the process of, within CT SEDS, ensuring that those resources are translatable into the top 10 languages in the state and would be produced and able to be disseminated either within the system or printed and disseminated and mailed to the parent, depending on what is more convenient. So that's one way that we're looking to meet the requirements of the new legislation for that slide. Additional information here about public transition programs and adult services at PPT meetings. We talked about at the first meeting, the student turns 24, ensuring that the parents have the information that they need. And you can see here, it also talks about approval, with approval of the parent or guardian, that there's a notification to the state agency that provides a program after high school about the potential eligibility of a student. So not that a student would be eligible, but potentially. And so there would be, that's a new requirement as students turn the age 14. I spoke to this one a little bit earlier. This is language from the actual statute around 2 years prior to graduation, and the requirements of the PPT meeting to ensure that there is outreach to the adult agencies and that they're invited, and that the parents have access to the programs and availability of potential programs. So for every public transition program, they must have a informational handout that's in plain language. So many of the programs do have those handouts, but we're also assessing that as part of our overview and responsibilities that are new, and ensuring that they do have, accessible information for parents and adult students. So I know Tom mentioned this during our last meeting, just talking about plain language for decision-making options. So there has been some work in this prior to this legislation, but this is talking about ensuring that, you know, parents have the information that they need to be able to, you know, for once students reach the age of 18, whether it's guardianship or other decision-making options for parents and families for students who have cognitive challenges. And so we're looking forward to partnering with other agencies and our directors and other advocacy groups to ensure that you know, that legally complex process is disseminated to parents in plain language. This just speaks to that point directly and talks about, this is directly from the legislation that talks about the conservatorship and guardianship and other alternatives for decision making. And then finally, the last couple slides here speak to a requirement where the CSDE needs to develop a handout for students to explain what it means to have an IEP and or a Section 504 plan. And we've done some great work in meeting with student advisories on what this could look like, what information should be contained within this. We had some wonderful conversations. Nicole Vitale is the point of contact at CERC, who supports all of the youth advisory work on the younger end of the spectrum, from students in grades 6 through 11 and or 12. And I know many of you on our State Advisory Council also are involved with the older group, and we also have some representative members who work with our youth advisory for students who are up through the age of 26. So we'll definitely be reaching out again in the upcoming weeks, but we had some great preliminary conversations, and the lessons learned from students always help center us and ground us in this task. So I appreciate their input. I can share more detail, but this talks about the handouts, that the different levels. So there needs to be a handout from grades K through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12, you know, for our older students, and must be translatable. We're really looking for any suggestion folks have around accessibility to ensure that students, a variety of levels of their developmental levels, would be able to access this information. And the students had some great suggestions about podcasts or short videos, and not just a handout, but other resources for students to help them understand what it means to have an IEP. Here are some of the questions that the students helped us to brainstorm around what that informational handout should require. The other piece of the handout is that there needed to be a glossary on some specific terms that relate to the IEP. So it's great work, challenging work in the sense of accessibility and usability for the students to make sure that it's useful. And another theme that came out, you know, is ensuring that they're aware of those individuals who can help them understand their rights and their, you know, what it means to have a plan, how to advocate not only for yourself, but for other students as well in the future. So these groups have done a really great job of helping us get the ball rolling for that informational handout. The final section here talks about the public transition programs, or PTPs. I just want to skip forward here to our school district activities. These are the requirements for public transition programs. And so all of our districts have been engaged in work since July 1 on this particular topic. We asked the districts to submit us their lists of public transition programs, and we've been reviewing that information. It will be posted on website, on EdSite. And you know, subsequent to this date, we just wanted to have kind of a baseline to be able to move forward and to work with the transition coordinators moving forward as well, and CERC. And next steps are to develop those standards and on-site monitoring practices to ensure that that those programs are meeting the needs of all of our students. There's the date for LEA, so it's coming quickly, where each district has to identify a transition coordinator by January 1st, and then the training and support moving forward in July. So again, not a lot of lead time for many of these activities. We don't yet have the transition coordinator and assistant transition coordinator in place. So I appreciate all the efforts that are going in, not only at the State Department, but our partnerships with other adult agencies and all of our transition folks that are working to support this new legislation. This one slide is a nice summary of all the information of the slides shared before, of the new requirements for PPT meetings. And then finally, we have some points of contact for you all around secondary transition that are supporting the different regions in the state. And then our regional transition network facilitators also. I know that was a lot of information, Susan, so happy to answer any questions, go back or
great.
review.
Would you believe I actually got an email right before our meeting started from a parent about this, and it says, the parent says, I've noticed that most school districts still have 21 in the transition Bill of Rights. It should be 22. They were noticing. So I'm assuming this is something the transition coordinator liaison will double check the schools have the right up-to-date information.
Yeah, so the Bill of Rights the transition Bill of Rights has been updated to reflect the new legislation. So it's just a matter of ensuring that that's disseminated, out there, approved. Those are the activities that we're engaged in now currently. So we do have an updated transition Bill of Rights.
Great. And then the second one was, would you consider putting some of your simple language videos into American Sign Language?
Absolutely. So any suggestions folks have around accessibility for our students and our families, please just let us know. We are open to the idea for the videos came from the students. And, the students talked about less about what the IEP sections meant and those types of things. And really they said, as a student, we're no different than other students. We just learn, we have a way that we need to learn and support that we need that assists us in being successful. So the messaging from our students was really critical and helping, like I said, reframe and reset us, because we were thinking more kind of content and what, the different sections of the IEP and what it means to have an IEP around accommodations and modifications. And the students really helped reset our focus a bit. And so it was a wonderful conversation. But like I said, with the accessibility around whether it be sign language, different language access, different cognitive levels, we're really struggling with that piece, because if you think about students in K through 4, any student, that the developmental range there is vast. To have a kindergartner understand a document and a 4th grader understand the same document, it's quite a task. And then, like I said, some of our students, given the challenges of their disability, will impact their access as well. So those are things that we're really struggling with, to be honest, in those age ranges and brackets for students.
Wonderful. We have a couple of hands up. Representative Comey first, and then Jeffrey.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. It was very thorough presentation. You had 2 graphics or 2 slides that talked about transition coordinators being in place prior to 7/1/24, and the years, 3 years versus 1 year.
Yes.
And then the same with training, 5 years versus 1 year. So I'm just wondering, what is that about? And what is the the end goal of that? I mean, is that just to get people moving sooner, or is that kind of like a carrot?
I think it's both. I think part of it is get us moving and making sure things are in place. The other part of that is really recognizing the turnover that we have and understanding that even though you may have a transition coordinator initially, maybe districts will hire or appoint someone in the next cycle, or there may be somebody new. So those that are identified this year as of July 1 have a little bit of a longer runway, if you will, in training, rather than trying to, squeeze it in before July. We will offer that, but it gives us a little more lead time. But for those that are identified after July 1 moving forward, they would have to be trained before July 1, 25. So they would only have that 1 year runway. So yeah, I look at it in two ways. You kind of highlighted both of them. One, just to get the ball rolling and get an initial list. And frankly, it also gives us a little time to ensure that we have the materials that we need and the process and the program to be able to develop that, disseminate it, make it available online and in person, all those different things. Those take time.
So the goal is to get someone in sooner rather than later.
January 1.
January 1.
Every district has to have them appointed.
Okay.
And then their training has to happen within 3 years. But obviously it would be before that, we would have that in place, because even the third year doesn't really make sense because the new people would have to be trained within a year anyway. So it gives us kind of a year.
Okay, thank you.
Runway, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, hey, Brian, one of the things I always appreciated early on was the publication that the CSDE had, the Parents Guide to Special Education.
Yes.
And while you were giving your presentation, I looked online and that the current one is 2021. So I'm just calling to your attention, in addition to possibly changing the language in the Students' Bill of Rights, you're going to want to reflect the change of the age transition in the Parents Guide. So for example, on page 29, it still references the eligibility up to the student's 22nd birthday, not the school year, the 22nd birthday. So I'm just being overly cautious and calling that to attention.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That is a document that's very well accessed, and it's definitely on the list. Those transition documents that I mentioned within CT SEDS, the Parent Guide is one of those as well. So we do have those updates, but we will look to get those updated documents on our website as well, just to make sure they reflect the new requirements.
Yeah, great.
But we have our practices and procedures manual that needs updating, the Parent Guide, the Transition Bill of Rights. There's several documents, but we're in process with making sure that those are posted. And then one of the requirements now too is to have all those in the same area. Our Alicia did a very nice job organizing our transition website a few years back, but given the context of the new legislation, we're going to take a fresh look at that. We are also moving to a new platform at the state so it's a new format that our website will be in, which will be improved from what it is currently. And so that will happen within the next year as well. So we're excited about the work and looking forward to the feedback on, accessibility, easier to find things, those plain language, all those types of things that were articulated in the legislation. But thank you, Jeff. Yeah, the Parent Guide is definitely a big, important document to update.
I always found it to be very helpful, and it was always good to refer others to it, and it was like by your plain language, that was a pretty good resource. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. We have Anna, and then there's something in the chat. So Anna.
Actually, I was going to point that out in a chat from Jonathan, our outplay students still to have access to their home district PTPs. And just to clarify, I'm assuming that privates would have the same requirements as the district, because we're considered a district, but just to make sure that I'm correct about that.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So the public transition programs, it would be a planning and placement team decision, for students that are that age level of whether or not, the students' transition supports are being provided by the public school district, by an approved private special education program, by a public transition program, or a combination thereof. Right. So we want to make sure that each student's program is individualized. And so, so to answer your question, John, they would have access, but it would definitely be a planning and placement team determination as far as which entity would be implementing the goals and objectives related to transition.
Great. Are those all the questions? Because then we'll just move on to our priorities.
Allison has her hand up.
Allison, you're not on my screen, so thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Allison.
No problem. I don't have a question. I just wanted to share that the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services also received some additional funding under this Public Act, and we will be able to add 14 new positions that will be working with transition age students. So we're still in the development phases of that, how we're going to use those positions and where they'll be added, so I can keep everyone posted as decisions are made.
Thank you, Allison.
Brian Smith has his hand up.
Allison stole my thunder with respect to enhancements of staff and the actual number. Good for you guys, 14. That's fantastic. DDS is in the midst of increasing the ranks of our transition advisor staff. So we will be doubling down. We currently have 3 in each region, and that will be increased to 6. So we'll be getting an additional 9 positions. So each region will have 6 transition advisors eventually, and the regions will be working on the deployment of them and how the geographic structure that's currently in place will be modified to absorb these 3 additional positions in each region. So we're pretty excited about that because we'll be able to get more involved with the youth at a younger age by having smaller geographies for which these transition advisors will be functioning in. So pretty excited. Not as many as BRS apparently, but we're happy with our 9 enhancements. So
that's great. Thanks, Brian.
Anybody else?
We'll send those slides out to folks. I know there was a lot of content there, so just so you have those for your reference if you need, and the links and the access to the documents, we'll make sure that you all have a copy.
Thank you, Brian. Those slides were just wonderful and wonderfully done, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our new business where we're going to go over a little summary of our priorities, specifically the least restrictive environment and restraint and seclusion work groups. Jennifer, is there a way to, what are you going to put up on the screen? She's muted. There she is.
Sorry, I have too many screens open. I was gonna just drop the link to the document.
Okay.
In the chat for everybody, and
Padlet.
The Padlets. Well, the Padlet links are in there, but I'll drop those separately. Sorry, I should have done that while you all were talking. So I'm going to be sharing.
I added. What were you saying, Jen?
I was just going to tell them that it was from our work groups that we met on November 13th, both of our work groups for least restrictive environment and restraint and seclusion. So it already has comments from the people that were part of the work group, but we also wanted to share it with our larger group as well, so that you can have an opportunity to add to it. And if you're not familiar with what a SWOT analysis is, it's really to identify what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, is that what did I say? That's it, right? Yeah. To these topics that we're talking about. And if you were not part of the meeting and you add to this, just ask that you please try to be as specific as possible when you put something in the Padlet, so that it's a usable comment for us, so that, because a lot of things people had questions on. So if you weren't part of the discussion, it would just be really helpful if you put like a complete thought for whatever you added to it.
And I added from
You
our.
want me to share anything?
Yeah, can you share that want to go to one of the Padlets first, or do you want to go right to the document?
I guess we could show people the Padlets first.
Okay.
And so I added, when we had our activity at our last school meeting, we didn't really get to restraint and seclusion, but the LRE, the least restrictive environment, I took the comments from the documents and that everyone made it in their groups and added them. And are people able to edit? I was not able to edit when I wanted to add to comments that matched.
You should be able to edit it, but you can just add it if you weren't able to edit it.
Wonderful.
So this one is the restraint and seclusion work group analysis and comments. So just to go over some of the themes, the group identified statewide dual capacity training to be a big need, in areas like prevention, de-escalation, appropriate documentation and reports, the laws and rights around restraint and seclusion. We talked about appropriate documentation, uniformity, comprehensive, detailed, useful information to help teams to plan for supporting the students' behavioral supports and staff training that might be needed. We talked about a need for closer monitoring and review of restraint and seclusion forms, more oversight at the local and state levels, opportunities to improve upon parental notification of restraint and seclusion. And I think like our group had made recommendations in the previous legislative session about being notified the same day as the restraint and seclusion and not within 24 hours. And we talked about, things like the trust and the relationships and how being informed right away and being informed by phone versus a note home in the backpack or an email would contribute to building trust and teams working together.
And Jennifer, in addition to that, we also discussed that if a form that a parent fills out, if they do want the note in the backpack and they are going to look for it, if they can't take calls during the day, or we had discussed that, that's part of the trust and the relationship.
Yep. A threat in both of the groups, staff shortages, which, is no big surprise. We've identified that as a problem across the board. And planning and placement teams have an opportunity to improve on appropriate evaluations like functional behavioral assessments, to develop behavior intervention plans to meet student needs through the planning and placement team to prevent restraint and seclusion. So those are kind of like the big picture ideas of what the group talked about. Was anybody in the work group, is there anything that you wanted to add that you feel like I didn't highlight?
This is Tom. Just to highlight the focus on restraint and seclusion so much is on just that, right? Restraint and seclusion. And we talked about in their building capacity to have positive behavior intervention stuff and not just positive behavior intervention, but behavior plans and well-developed individualized behavior plans, et cetera, that are often not in place, even with students who have repeated and multiple restraint and seclusion incidents. So that's a good opportunity to kind of just sidestep all of this and, not sidestep it, but get out in front of it, right?
It's really to prevent instead of being reactive to it.
You have all these rules around restraint and seclusion and reporting and all this kind of stuff, but like spend more resources in training and knowledge on the front end of that. So anyway, we talked about that a bit.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else have anything to add from that group? No? Okay. We can go on to the other Padlet for LRE, least restrictive environment. So again, the theme, staffing shortages, ongoing threat to, kids being outplaced, kids not being supported in a least restrictive environment within the classroom. Concern about Connecticut having the highest percentage of students with disabilities served in separate schools. There is a link for that data on the Padlet and on the sheet that I just dropped in the chat. the need to support districts to be able to provide a continuum of placements and robust supplementary aids and services for high need students. Keeping in mind special education is a program, not a place, and our schools need funding to do it. So we can't just say we want our schools to have programs to keep our kids in schools. We actually really need to provide funding and resources and training to help them do that. Again, statewide dual capacity training. And if you're not familiar with what dual capacity means, it's training for families and our educators so that everybody has kind of the same knowledge at the same time. And that's on inclusive practices, expand it. We have some good ones within state, and the CERC step-by-step inclusive model was specifically mentioned, and the group thought that expanding some of these things we already know are working and helping in some districts throughout the state. The LRE checklist we talked about a lot. It's used inconsistently, and there's a consensus to update it and provide training around the use of it. And we also have the opportunities to use person-centered planning, authentic student voice at planning and placement teams to help with appropriate placement. And we need to build the capacity of general educators to support students with disabilities in their classroom and give them time to collaborate with their special education colleagues. And a recommendation for expanding unified programs in districts. And somebody shared an idea about a competitive grant for financial support to do that. So we talked about a lot. I feel like we talked for a very long time in this group. It was a really great discussion. So I'm going to open it up to anybody in the group that wanted to add.
I'll just, I just want, since I have Brian here, I have his ear. CERC is getting ready for proposal time. And we mentioned the person-centered planning options, which I think are huge. And Connecticut offered the Renew training a few years back. And Renew is a person-centered planning option specifically for students with social emotional behavior issues. I would very much like to bring that training back into Connecticut. I think that it's something that's it's out of New Hampshire. You can Google Renew, and it's out of New Hampshire. It's got some really great data to show the support that it gives students with emotional issues and behavior issues. So, Brian, wherever you're hiding. Oh, there you are. I'm going to put that back on our proposal. Because I think that's just really important. And I speak as an educator, as a CERC employee, as well as a parent, when I say that we need to support our students with mental health issues.
Thank you, Missy. Tom?
Yeah, just to speak to the LRE checklist thing, I think not just the fact that the LRE checklist needs to be redone necessarily, but just that a checklist in and of itself and naming it a checklist makes it kind of not a very rigorous process and a rigorous tool that you use to go through that decision and around what the least restrictive environment is. So I think that's just some conversation around what's happening there during that decision point at PPTs around placement of a student. And also just to your point on the funding, which I understand completely. Having said that, a lot of districts spend a lot of money, a lot of money outplacing students. And so it's not always just a matter of the funding. It's a decision that's made what to do with that funding. So they're spending $80,000 to $100,000 a year to outplace a student, turns into millions for many districts. So sometimes the money's there, it's just the utilization of that money. So I just want to make that comment as well, because I think that's a key part of it. It is sometimes the funding, yes, for some districts, but districts that have, 10s and 20s and more students outplaced, the funding's there. So anyway, just around that decision process that happens at PPTs too. So thanks.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that was something that was touched on in both groups. When we were talking about statewide training, we talked about even going up to the boards of education level at the district, because, for restraint and seclusion, they're supposed to be writing policies for it. and they do make budget decisions such as that. So I thank you for bringing that point up.
What I was wondering is where, because we have discussed this before in our group, where does universal pre-K fit into this? Doesn't that help with our least restrictive environment? And with making students feel like they belong and from an early age? Anyone?
I can speak to that quick, Susan. I mean, we talk a lot about universal pre-K as a foundation for early learning in our state. And, you know, the students, obviously, the requirement for students to be identified at age 3. So the pre-K programs now are driven by the IDA or by special education law in the state, as far as those students having access, which then leads to the inclusive pre-K programming that the districts offer and so forth. So it definitely sets the stage and the groundwork and the framework for educating our youngest learners, all students, obviously, and then having access rather than having a lottery system for peers. The peers would be in place and all those different things. And districts often struggle with, as new students are identified during the school year, making sure that they're maintaining that balance of less than 50% of students with IEPs in the classroom and all those various things that happen throughout the course of the year. So there's no question that universal access to pre-K would address the environment as a whole for learning for our youngest students.
Thank you.
And Susan, I believe on the restraint and seclusion group, we also talked about the preschool setting really being a place we can lay the foundation for social emotional learning and behavior, and also identifying kids who may have needs earlier than if they had entered just in kindergarten. So
okay.
I think that
should go
fall somewhere in here. Opportunity, perhaps.
Opportunities, yeah.
And Representative Comey has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I would say you just mentioned the local boards of eds and their role in policymaking around these areas. I will say that, while that is true, quite frankly, local districts are really just adopting, at least in what I've seen in many districts across the state, is the Shipman and Goodwin sort of template policies, which has sort of simplified the work for them. And I don't know who, it's a frustrating, I'll try not to sound too frustrated with it, but the Shipman and Goodwin folks, I don't know who they're talking to, but they certainly are not talking to parents and people with firsthand experience in my experience. So I don't like that they're doing that. And I'm not sure what to do about that. If, we need to begin conversations, with the Shipman and Goodwin folks, because the fact that, lawyers are writing policies, just these standard template policies for every single district across Connecticut is just quite appalling to me. And I just want to make note of that. Thank you.
Thank you. They do represent school districts, so I think that's who they're really writing the policies for. But it doesn't mean that boards of education at the local level can't make additional changes. So, there are instances where perhaps there is a parent advisory group in place, and they might ask for some additional things to be added to the policies, additional protections. Like, for instance, currently you do not have to report on exclusionary timeouts in the restraint and seclusion law, and a district could theoretically add that to their restraint and seclusion policy. That's not going to be on the Shipman and Goodwin policy, but that's just an example of the flexibility, because we like to have all the districts be able to have the power to do those things in districts. So I think part of that is really helping to empower the stakeholders in that district to know what to advocate for. And then to Tom's point, it's not just training around the policies, it's really a training around all of their responsibilities for special education, because often a conversation that comes up is they're, cutting all of the interventionists in general education, and there ends up being kids referred to special education because they cannot get their services through the tiered support process. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that because I could go on and on about that, but thank you. And I see Anna and Missy have their hands up.
Yes, Jennifer, you covered some of what I was going to say. Basically, Shipman and they are district attorneys, and they're looking how are they going to protect the district in case of legislation. So they will be simplifying things and advising the district, but it is up to the district to accept or to reject that advisement. Says, yes, I know what you're saying, but I'm focused on the kids, and I this is what we need to do. And I think you do have something there, Representative Comey, that maybe some sort of empowerment to new directors and new administrators, new leaders in districts to know that Shipman people are not writing their policy. They are giving them advisement.
So it is 10:30. How do we want to do this? Because I know Tammy had something in the chat, which I wrote down, which we can include in our notes. Do we want to extend for 5 minutes so Representative Comey and Missy can say? Would you like to do that? Is that okay?
Yeah, I say let them wrap up their comments, and then you can close the meeting.
Okay. So who would like to go first, Missy or Representative Comey? Oh, Representative Comey, great.
No, I see your point, but in reality, yes, being a Board of Ed member is, people's second and third and fourth jobs, right? And they, while they're extremely, valuable to the process, I think it takes years. And as someone who's come on as a new legislator and who was an advocate to Board of Eds before this, it still takes years to know what your role is, right? And you're kind of drinking, a fire hose through a fire hose for years. And I love the idea about the including this in our Board of Ed training, that these are template policies and Shipman and Goodwin. But if you have parents that are not aware, that are not paying attention, right? That are not aware that these policies are being changed or revised or, reviewed at the Board of Ed meetings. And as you know, special ed, parents certainly have a lot, lot more on their plates and than even the regular education kids. But I guess, there's very few people at our Board of Ed meetings, and we're a pretty, active community. And I just worry that these things, they come and go through, a meeting and a half or 2 meetings. They, policy gets changed. And if you're not paying attention, you just don't have, you can't count on a parent advisory group or even a parent to show up and advocate for a change at that level. So I love the idea of the include it, at least the training for the Board of Ed members themselves, but we know they don't reach out to parents. We know that they don't, on the whole, generally. That's all.
Yeah, my only comment was, because I just expressing some concern, but we have regional transition networks where we have educators that come together and talk all things transition. We have a transition symposium, and you know, at every year we have a session on legislative issues. And the regional transition networks each year have, you know, legislative issues around transition. And we always reach out to Shipman and Goodman to have those conversations with our educators. And so it's just a conversation that I'll start having with Alicia and our RTN members, but just some thoughts there. So just wanted to express that concern.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have their hand up? Missy, can you see?
No, I'm just
Okay,
trying to take my
so
hand down. It
We
won't
will
go
not
down.
have time to get to roundtable. So if anyone has any roundtable agency updates or unmet needs, could you please email them to Jolie and she will share them with the group. If you have any events that you want to share, you have to email Jennifer and she will share those with the group. In addition, a couple of action items. I noticed I love the Otter app because if you noticed in the chat, it popped up some action items. But in addition, Jolie, you and I, Jennifer put her email in the chat. You and I are going to reach out to Representative Comey with the January 24th snow date. And we also need to, I'm going to share the document, Representative Comey, that we already put together, the little flyer to invite your legislators. And I'm going to share it with you right after this meeting so you can look it over. So can anyone, and then we were looking at, I'll get together, Jolie, can we get together a list of the higher ed, early ed, and education committee? It's all online. List of the members for people to reach out to. To see if they're anyone if they're in anyone's district. Okay, so we are at the end. Would someone please make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved by Missy.
And a second?
Second.
Wonderful. The November 29, 2023 full SAC meeting is adjourning at 10:35 a.m. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you.